My husband, Arthur, died on a Tuesday. The day his heart, which had powered an empire, simply gave out, was also the day my son, Blaine, ascended to the throne of that very empire. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that I, Vanessa, had inherited a fortune of my own, a quiet wellspring of power I had kept hidden for decades. And less than a year later, on a deceptively sunny afternoon, I stood in my living room, arranging a vase of fresh, fragrant lilies, a small act of defiant beauty in a house that felt increasingly like a mausoleum, when I heard my daughter-in-law's voice, sharp and clear, slicing through the thin veneer of grief. "This useless old woman is going to eat through all our money. We need to throw her in a nursing home." The lily stems, cool and slick, slipped from my trembling fingers, scattering like fallen soldiers on the polished mahogany floor. My breath hitched, a phantom hand clutching at my throat. Lilia. Always Lilia, the architect of veiled cruelty. "Lilia, please." "My son, Blaine," responded, his voice a weak, almost pathetic plea. "She's still my mother." "Your mother?" Lilia scoffed, the sound dripping with such venomous contempt it curdled the blood in my veins. "Blaine, wake up! She's a burden! Look at this house! She shuffles around here like some ghost, contributing nothing. We're paying for her food, her medications, everything. And for what? So she can cling to Arthur's memory and drain our resources?" My chest tightened, an ache blooming behind my ribs that had nothing to do with grief for Arthur and everything to do with a profound, searing betrayal. Arthur had built Sterling Innovations from nothing, a garage startup in Silicon Valley, fueled by late-night coding sessions and an unshakable belief in his own genius. And I, his quiet partner, his meticulous archivist, his unwavering pillar, had been beside him every single step of the way. While he dreamt up the next disruptive technology, I managed the intricate dance of the books, navigated the labyrinthine world of corporate compliance, deciphered complex legal documents, and even, at times, predicted market shifts with an uncanny intuition that often startled even Arthur himself. We were a formidable force, a tandem engine driving a colossal machine. Yet, in Lilia's eyes, and in Blaine's increasingly glazed gaze, I was nothing but a fading photograph, a dusty relic of a past that no longer held any relevance. When Arthur passed, suddenly and unexpectedly from a massive heart attack, the world tilted on its axis. Blaine, our only son, a man of 35, smooth-faced and always meticulously dressed, stepped into the CEO role. It was his birthright, the natural succession. Arthur had groomed him, taught him the intricate ropes of the industry, and bestowed upon him a name synonymous with innovation. But what Arthur couldn't impart was the raw hunger, the intuitive understanding of risk, the bold foresight that propelled visionaries forward. Blaine was methodical, careful, a diligent administrator, perhaps, but he lacked the killer instinct, the audacious spark, the deep well of strategic cunning that had defined his father. And critically, he lacked my quiet, forensic mind, my knack for discerning patterns in chaos, for uncovering truths hidden in plain sight. Blaine and Lilia, his insatiable wife, were convinced they had inherited Arthur's entire vast estate, including his personal fortune, which they saw as a bottomless well to fund their increasingly extravagant lifestyle. They had no inkling, not the slightest suspicion, about my own separate inheritance, a significant sum that dated back to my youth, carefully managed and invested over decades, completely unbeknownst to anyone, including Arthur himself, save for my trusted financial advisor, Mr. Albright. It was a private safety net, a secret I had guarded fiercely since childhood, born from a deep-seated desire for absolute independence. It was a wellspring of quiet, strategic power, a card I had never intended to play. But now, hearing Lilia's cruel words, the contemptuous dismissal of my very being, I knew it was time to reshuffle the deck. The game had changed, and I was about to deal myself a winning hand. "She's taking up space, Blaine," Lilia's voice continued, rising in pitch, a dangerous crescendo. This house is enormous. We could sell it, downsize her into a nice assisted living facility in Mesa. It's got a great activities program. Think of the capital we'd free up for Sterling. Michael says the new product line needs a massive injection of funds if we're going to compete with Zenith Tech. He's right, we're bleeding cash. Michael Thorne, Lilia's brother, a slick, opportunistic consultant with a predatory gleam in his eye who had recently wormed his way into Sterling Innovations' inner circle, whispering sweet nothings and poison into Blaine's ear. His advice, cloaked in corporate jargon and empty promises, was meticulously designed to benefit only himself and Lilia, carving out slices of Sterling's dwindling pie for their own consumption. He was a charlatan in a tailored suit, a wolf in sheep's clothing, and Blaine, bless his naive heart, was a lamb being led to slaughter. Michael's just looking out for us, Lilia, Blaine murmured, his voice sounding weak, unsure, caught between his conniving wife and the faintest echo of filial duty. He's looking out for us, Blaine, because we're the ones making smart decisions, Lilia snapped, her patience worn thin. This isn't charity. This is business. Sterling needs to grow, and we can't afford to be weighed down by sentimental attachments. My hands, still stinging faintly from the lily stems, unclenched slowly. Sentimental attachments. That's all I was to them. Not a grieving widow, still reeling from the loss of her soulmate. Not a devoted mother who had nurtured Blaine from infancy. Not the woman who had helped build their entire world, brick by meticulous brick. Just a liability, a burden, a faded, inconvenient photograph gathering dust in their grand, ill-gotten mansion. A quiet, cold fury settled over me. It wasn't the kind of rage that made me want to scream or smash things. It was a calculating fury, honed by years of sifting through complex financial ledgers and uncovering hidden truths. My unique skill set, honed over decades as an archivist, the ability to meticulously organize, cross-reference, and analyze vast amounts of data, was about to be unleashed. I had spent my life preserving the past, but now I needed to secure my own future, and in doing so, perhaps, reshape theirs and the destiny of Sterling Innovations. That very night, under the cloak of silent determination, I began to move, not physically, not with overt action, but intellectually. My cozy, seemingly innocuous study, with its floor-to-ceiling bookshelves crammed with literary classics and historical tomes, transformed into my war room. The soft glow of my laptop screen illuminated stacks of old financial reports, meticulously bound legal documents, and Arthur's personal ledgers, his intimate, handwritten notes on every aspect of Sterling's growth, from its nascent days to its towering success. These were treasures to me, a detailed roadmap of Sterling Innovations' history, its triumphs and vulnerabilities. To Blaine, they were just old paper, destined to be cleared out by an estate sale liquidator, a symbol of a past he was eager to shed. My first strategic move was to confirm my suspicions about Michael Thorne. Blaine, in his misguided zeal to modernize and streamline, had implemented a new, company-wide cloud storage system for all internal documents. And in a moment of unwitting generosity, or perhaps profound underestimation, he'd even given me a view-only access link, thinking I might enjoy keeping up with things, perhaps reminiscing over old marketing materials. He never imagined that my archivist's eye, trained to spot the minutiae, the anachronisms, the subtle deviations from the norm, would be the instrument of his undoing. It didn't take long for Michael's greasy fingerprints to appear all over Sterling's digital finances. Large, unexplained consulting fees paid to shell corporations with generic, forgettable names like Apex Solutions and Global Synergies. Companies that Evelyn Reed, my trusted lawyer, later confirmed were registered to dummy addresses and seemed to exist solely to funnel money from Sterling's coffers. There were inflated invoices for services never rendered, contracts signed at suspiciously high rates with suppliers directly linked to Lilia's family, and a series of questionable investments in failing startups that seemed designed not for profit, but to systematically bleed Sterling dry. Michael wasn't just a consultant. He was a corporate parasite, meticulously siphoning off Sterling's resources, preparing it for an inevitable, controlled collapse from which he and Lilia planned to profit immensely. And Lilia, it turned out, was not merely a willing accomplice, she was an active, eager participant. Beyond her increasingly exorbitant personal expenses charged to company accounts, designer clothes, luxury vacations, a new sports car for Blaine, which he never questioned, I uncovered a clandestine side deal she had brazenly brokered with one of Sterling's major overseas clients. A multi-million-dollar contract, a cornerstone of Sterling's revenue, had been partially diverted into a secret offshore account, circumventing Blaine and the company's official channels entirely. This wasn't merely greed, this was outright fraud, a betrayal of the highest order, a cancerous growth on Arthur's legacy. The sheer scale of their deception was staggering. They weren't just neglecting the company, they were actively, meticulously sabotaging it, bleeding it dry from the inside out, piece by agonizing piece. And Blaine, lost in his own administrative fog, utterly oblivious, paralyzed by his weakness and his wife's manipulative charm, was letting it happen. I contacted Evelyn Reed almost immediately. Evelyn was not just a lawyer. She was a force of nature, a legal eagle with a razor-sharp mind, an uncanny ability to navigate complex legal landscapes, and a formidable reputation for dismantling corporate fraud. We'd worked together on a few charity initiatives in the past, and she knew me as more than just Arthur's widow. She knew my quiet competence, my meticulous nature, and my unwavering resolve. "Vanessa," she said over a discreet, encrypted call, her voice grim, laced with a professional disgust. "What you're describing isn't just mismanagement. This is criminal. This is a deliberate, calculated scheme to bankrupt Sterling Innovations, strip its assets, and leave your husband's legacy in ashes. And me," I added, my voice flat, devoid of emotion, a thin shield over the raging storm within. "They want to put me in a nursing home, Evelyn. They think I'm a useless old woman, a financial drain, a relic to be discarded." Evelyn's sharp intake of breath was audible, a sound of profound indignation. "Then we make sure they regret that assessment, Vanessa. Every single syllable. What do you want? Retribution? Justice? Or do you want to save what Arthur built?" I paused, looking at a framed photo of Arthur on my desk, his eyes twinkling with the mischievous spark that had always drawn me to him. "All of it, Evelyn. I want justice for their betrayal. I want retribution for their cruelty. But most of all, I want to save Sterling Innovations. And I want to secure Leo's future, my grandson. He deserves to inherit a legacy, not a ruin. Leo, bless his pure heart, was the one innocent in this tangled web, a bright, sensitive boy of 7 who still loved to sit on my lap and listen to my stories. He was the future, and I would fight tooth and nail to protect it. Evelyn and I embarked on a meticulous, clandestine operation. She brought in a crack team of forensic accountants and cybersecurity experts, all bound by ironclad non-disclosure agreements. Their work conducted in the shadows, their reports delivered directly to me. We built an unassailable dossier, a damning paper trail of Michael's fraudulent schemes, Lilia's outright embezzlement, and the increasingly precarious financial state into which they had driven Sterling Innovations. We even uncovered Michael's desperate last-ditch plan to sell off Sterling's invaluable intellectual property, Arthur's most prized patents, the very heart and soul of the company's competitive edge, to a predatory rival firm, Marcus Thorne's Zenith Tech, at a fraction of its true worth. It was a fire sale, designed to cover their mounting personal debts and line their pockets one last time before the inevitable, controlled crash. "They're planning a hostile takeover, Vanessa," Evelyn revealed one evening, her voice laced with chilling disgust. "Not from an outside firm, but from within. Michael's orchestrating it, using Blaine as an unwitting puppet. He's going to make a fortune from the sale of the IP, then let the rest of Sterling collapse, leaving Blaine holding the bag, completely ruined." The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. Michael wasn't just stealing from the company. He was orchestrating its complete destruction. using his own brother-in-law as an unwitting, disposable scapegoat. Blaine would be utterly ruined, his reputation destroyed, his future shattered. And all the while, Lilia would be complicit, profiting from her husband's downfall, ready to start a new life with tainted money. The depth of their depravity was truly unfathomable. The emotional toll was immense. Every document I reviewed, every hidden transaction I uncovered, was a fresh wound, a new betrayal. This wasn't just about money. It was about family, about trust, about the legacy of a man I had loved more than life itself. There were countless nights I couldn't sleep, consumed by a grief that transcended Arthur's passing, a profound grief for the son I thought I knew, for the family I believed I had. But the quiet fury remained, a steady ember, a burning coal in my heart, fueling my determination. It solidified my resolve, turning my grief into a relentless drive for justice. My public persona remained meticulously unchanged. I continued to tend my thriving garden, baking cookies for Leo with a serene smile, and engaging in polite, innocuous conversation with Blaine and Lilia whenever they deemed it necessary to visit. They would occasionally drop by the house, sometimes with Leo, sometimes just to patronize me, their eyes scanning the perfectly maintained living room as if calculating its resale value. "Mom, you look a little tired," Lilia would say, her tone saccharine, laced with a subtle hint of judgment. "Are you sure you wouldn't be more comfortable in a place with more services? Perhaps a community where you can find others your age?" I would simply smile serenely, my gaze unwavering. "Oh no, dear. I prefer my own space, my own schedule. Besides, my mind is as sharp as ever. Just a little more paperwork these days, with Arthur's estate." I'd offer a knowing glance, a subtle bait, to see if they'd take it, if a flicker of suspicion would cross their arrogant faces. They never did. Their conviction in my supposed senility, their monumental arrogance, was absolute. They never imagined that the paperwork I was referring to was the meticulous construction of their impending ruin, the carefully assembled legal guillotine. The climax of my quiet reckoning was meticulously planned for the annual Sterling Innovations Gala, a black tie event Arthur had always cherished above all others. It was more than just a party. It was a gathering of the company's elite, the board members, major investors, key employees, and the top brass of the industry. Michael, in his arrogant estimation of his own cunning, had chosen this very event to finalize the sale of Sterling's crucial patents to Zenith Tech, a seemingly legitimate strategic partnership announcement that would mask his ultimate betrayal. It was the perfect stage for his self-proclaimed triumph, and for my silent, devastating strike. The timing had to be impeccable, the execution flawless. Over the weeks leading up to the gala, I arranged for discreet, private meetings with the individual board members. Not Blaine, not Michael, just the key players, the ones with Arthur's original vision still in their hearts, men and women who, though successful, often lacked the moral fortitude to confront outright corruption. Evelyn provided me with a bulletproof, discreet approach. We presented them with the irrefutable, meticulously sourced evidence. The financial irregularities, the web of shell companies, the damning offshore accounts, the impending, disastrous sale of the intellectual property, and Michael's systematic sabotage. The initial shock on their faces gave way to outrage, then to a steely, unified resolve. They had trusted Blaine, and through him, they had unwittingly trusted Michael. Now they understood the terrifying depth of the betrayal that had threatened to engulf their shares, their reputations, and Arthur's legacy. The night of the gala arrived. The grand ballroom of the Phoenix Renaissance Downtown Hotel glittered with the brilliance of crystal chandeliers, the hum of polite conversation and the clinking of champagne flutes creating a deceptively jovial atmosphere. Blaine, looking stiff and uncomfortable in his custom-tailored tuxedo, was mingling awkwardly, his smile strained. Lilia, radiant in a shimmering emerald gown, held court with her brother, Michael, who was already clinking glasses with Marcus Thorne, the predatory CEO of Zenith Tech. They were confident, almost gleeful, radiating an air of untouchable power. utterly oblivious to the storm about to break over their meticulously coiffed heads. I arrived quietly, precisely on schedule, dressed in a simple, elegant black velvet gown that shimmered subtly in the low lights. No flashy jewelry, no ostentatious displays, just a quiet dignity, an understated presence that belied the controlled fury simmering beneath. I took my seat at a table near the back, observing, waiting, my eyes scanning the room, absorbing every detail. Leo, thankfully, was with his grandmother on Lilia's side of the family, mercifully unaware of the cataclysmic event about to unfold. Blaine stepped onto the brightly lit stage, microphone in hand, ready to deliver his annual address. He started with a forced, practiced smile, praising Michael's innovative strategies and the exciting new direction Sterling was supposedly taking. My heart ached for him, for his profound blindness, for the precipice he stood on. Then, at a prearranged signal from Evelyn, who sat discreetly in the audience, almost imperceptibly nodding, the large projection screens behind Blaine flickered. Instead of the usual Sterling Innovations logo, a series of slides began to appear, each one a bombshell, meticulously arranged, devastating in its clarity. The first was a magnified image of an invoice from Apex Solutions, clearly bearing Michael's signature and an exorbitant, fraudulent sum. Then, a chilling screenshot of an email from Lilia to her offshore contact, detailing the diverted client funds, her own words condemning her. Next, a complex diagram of the network of shell corporations, clearly showing the insidious flow of money out of Sterling. Not into it, a graphic illustration of the corporate hemorrhaging. And finally, a scanned copy of the agreement to sell Arthur's crucial patents, signed by Michael, with Thorne's eager, complicit signature beside it. The murmurs in the ballroom swelled into a collective gasp, then into a shocked, horrified roar. Blaine, mid-sentence, faltered, his eyes darting to the screen behind him, his face draining of all color, transforming from confusion to disbelief, then to utter gut-wrenching horror as he recognized the irrefutable evidence of his own unwitting complicity. His world, so carefully constructed, shattered before his very eyes. Michael, initially smirking, a self-satisfied grin plastered across his face, tried to rush the stage, shouting, "What is this? This is a hack! It's fake! A smear campaign!" But it was too late. The board members, now rising from their seats, their faces grim and unified, stepped forward, confirming the authenticity of the documents. Marcus Thorne, the rival CEO, stood frozen, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock, dawning legal peril, and the realization that his own corporate reputation was about to be dragged through the mud. Lilia, seeing her carefully constructed world implode with such spectacular public humiliation, let out a choked cry, a strangled sound of despair, her hand flying to her mouth. Her shimmering emerald gown seemed to lose its luster, her carefully constructed composure shattering into a million pieces. She stared at me across the room, her eyes wide with a dawning, terrifying realization. The useless old woman had orchestrated their downfall. The security personnel, already positioned discreetly by Evelyn's team, moved swiftly and with quiet efficiency. They escorted Michael and Lilia out of the ballroom, their protests echoing futilely against the stunned, shocked silence of the crowd. It wasn't a public arrest, not yet, but a humiliating, public removal, their walk of shame witnessed by every influential person they had ever tried to impress or deceive. Blaine remained on stage, utterly alone, exposed, his dream of leading Sterling Innovations crumbling around him like a house of cards in a hurricane. I walked towards the stage, my simple black dress a stark contrast to the glittering chaos that had just unfolded. Blaine saw me coming, his eyes filled with a raw mixture of despair, shame, and a dawning, terrifying understanding. He didn't fight, didn't argue. He simply stepped aside, his shoulders slumped, as I approached the microphone, his face a canvas of defeat. "Good evening," I said, my voice clear and steady, amplified by the sound system, carrying a quiet authority that commanded attention. "My name is Vanessa Sterling. For 42 years, I worked alongside my late husband, Arthur, to build Sterling Innovations into the company it is today. And tonight, I'm here to ensure that his legacy and the future of this company is preserved. I didn't need to explain further. The damning evidence on the screens, still visible, spoke volumes. I detailed the immediate steps the newly unified board would take. Immediate legal action against Michael and Lilia for criminal fraud and embezzlement, a comprehensive forensic audit to recover all stolen funds, and a strategic pivot to secure Sterling's intellectual property, reinforcing its market position. I also announced my decision to temporarily step in as interim CEO, to steady the ship and guide it through the storm, to personally oversee its resuscitation. A few gasped, others nodded, a palpable wave of relief washing over the room. They knew Arthur's wife was no stranger to the intricate workings of the business. They knew I was a force to be reckoned with. In the tumultuous days that followed, the fallout from the gala was immense, reverberating through the entire industry. Michael and Lilia, stripped of their power and wealth, faced crippling criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. Their lavish lives unraveled in a rapid cascade of legal battles, public shame, and the seizure of assets. The opulent Biltmore Estates mansion, purchased with my down payment and their fraudulent loans, was seized as part of the asset recovery. They lost everything, reduced to shadows of their former arrogant selves. News channels buzzed with the scandal, headlines screaming about the corporate coup and the matriarch's revenge. I handled the media storm with the same quiet composure I had displayed at the gala, issuing concise, dignified statements that focused on corporate integrity and the future of Sterling, refusing to descend into personal mudslinging. Blaine, bewildered and heartbroken, initially retreated into himself, a ghost haunting his own empty mansion. He hadn't been actively malicious, but his naivete, his blinding trust in Lilia, and his desperate desire to prove himself had made him an unwitting, compliant tool in their destructive scheme. He was utterly devastated by his wife's betrayal and his brother-in-law's treachery, but more profoundly, he was shattered by the agonizing realization of how utterly wrong he had been about me, about his own mother, whom he had so carelessly dismissed. He came to my Sedona home a week later, looking pale and gaunt, his shoulders slumped, his once impeccable suit rumpled. He stood at my doorway, hesitant, hat in hand, a far cry from the confident CEO he had once pretended to be. He looked like a lost boy. "Mom," he began, his voice hoarse, raw with emotion. I had no idea. I swear, I'm so incredibly sorry. For everything. For what Lilia said. For letting them do this to you, to Sterling, to Dad's legacy. I was so foolish. I looked at him then, truly looked at him, and saw not the arrogant young man, but the lost, broken boy I had raised. The pain in my heart was immense, a heavy, familiar ache, but so was the faint, fragile glimmer of hope. "Come in, Blaine," I said gently, opening the door wider, ushering him into the warmth of my home. We talked for hours, sitting across from each other in my study, the very room where I had uncovered his family's deception. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I laid out the full extent of Michael and Lilia's calculated crimes, the systematic bleeding of Sterling, and the perilous position Blaine had unknowingly put the company in. I explained the inheritance I had kept hidden, not out of malice or a desire to deceive, but out of a deep-seated desire for personal autonomy, a quiet strength that was uniquely my own. "I never wanted to use it," I confessed, my voice soft. "Not like this. Not as a weapon. But when you and Lilia, when you saw me as a burden, as someone to be discarded, as an obstacle to be removed, I realized I had to protect myself, and Leo, and Sterling. It wasn't about revenge, Blaine. It was about survival, about setting things right, about ensuring Arthur's life work wasn't in vain." Blaine listened, his head bowed, tears silently tracing paths down his hollow cheeks. He cried, not just for his own foolishness, for his broken marriage, for the trust he had shattered, but for the loss of the respect he had once unknowingly commanded. "Can you ever forgive me, Mom?" he finally asked, his eyes red-rimmed, searching my face for any sign of softening. I considered his question carefully, Forgiveness wasn't a switch you flipped, a light you turned on. It was a long, arduous journey, a landscape of emotional peaks and valleys. Blaine, I said gently, I don't know if I can forgive them. Their actions were born of malice and conscious intent. But you were lost. You made terrible mistakes, profound errors in judgment. But you weren't evil. We have a lot of work to do, both of us. Rebuilding trust takes time, honest effort, painful honesty, and a profound willingness to truly see each other, stripped of illusion. Over the next year, I poured my entire being into Sterling Innovations. The initial weeks were a whirlwind of damage control and crisis management, a relentless uphill battle. The company, battered by the scandal and teetering on the brink of financial collapse, was a colossal challenge. Investors were pulling out in droves, clients were wavering, and employee morale, already low, had plummeted to unprecedented depths. My first act as interim CEO was to hold an all-hands meeting, not in a grand boardroom, but in the sprawling, echoing factory floor where Arthur had first started. I spoke to them, not as a CEO delivering platitudes, but as the woman who had helped build their company from the ground up, the one who knew their names, their families, their quiet struggles. We've been through a storm, I told them, my voice carrying over the echoes of dormant machinery. A deliberate act of sabotage from within. But Sterling Innovations is more than just a name on a building. It's Arthur's vision. It's your hard work, your dedication, and it's a promise for the future. We will rebuild. We will emerge stronger, more resilient, and we will do it together, with integrity and renewed purpose. I instituted immediate, transparent financial audits, severed ties with all suspicious third-party vendors, many of whom, it turned out, were deeply entangled in Michael's and Lilia's web of deceit, and personally renegotiated key contracts that had been deliberately inflated or mismanaged. I redirected funds, channeling capital directly into Arthur's most groundbreaking R&D projects, specifically those tied to the very patents Michael had tried to sell off for pennies. These patents, Arthur's true genius, were the bedrock of our future, the key to our revival. I pulled countless late nights in Arthur's old office, surrounded by his familiar blueprints and notes, feeling his guiding presence, his quiet encouragement. My years as an archivist, with my meticulous attention to detail and my uncanny ability to connect disparate pieces of information, proved invaluable. I could see the hidden strengths, the overlooked opportunities, and the fundamental integrity that still lay at Sterling's core, waiting to be rediscovered. My personal inheritance, the secret fund I had kept for so long, became an unexpected, crucial lifeline. I didn't announce its existence publicly, choosing discretion, but I quietly injected a substantial portion of it into Sterling Innovations. I purchased back key shares from panicked investors at a reduced rate, signaling my unwavering confidence in the company's future. This infusion of capital, combined with a renewed ethical focus on our core strengths, began to turn the tide. Orders slowly picked up. Investor confidence cautiously returned, and the comforting buzz of machinery on the factory floor grew louder, a harmonious symphony of recovery. Blaine, humbled and chastened by his monumental failures, joined my team not as CEO, but as a project manager reporting directly to me. He worked harder than I had ever seen him, eager to learn, eager to atone, almost desperate to prove his worth. He arrived early, stayed late, and absorbed every lesson I imparted about corporate ethics, genuine leadership, and the true, invaluable currency of trust. I tasked him with overseeing the implementation of new, stringent internal controls, a painful but necessary process that forced him to confront the exact mechanisms of the fraud he had unwittingly enabled. He sought my advice, truly listened, and slowly, painstakingly, began to earn back a fragile sliver of my trust. His relationship with Leo, his son, blossomed into something genuine and loving. He started spending more quality time with Leo, becoming the attentive, engaged father my grandson deserved. He read to him every night, took him to the park, and for the first time in years truly saw his son, rather than just seeing him as a collateral in a lavish, self-serving lifestyle. With Sterling Innovations stabilized and thriving once more, its reputation meticulously rebuilt, I began to transition the leadership. I didn't hand it back to Blaine immediately, knowing he still had a journey of growth ahead. Instead, I appointed a seasoned, trustworthy executive from outside the family, a woman named Clara Vance, whose reputation for integrity, sharp intellect, and decisive leadership was impeccable. My own role shifted to chairwoman of the board, overseeing long-term strategy, ethical governance, and ensuring that the company never again strayed from Arthur's core values. This vital shift freed me to pursue a new path, one inspired by the very betrayal I had endured and the harsh, profound lessons it had taught me. The useless old woman began to build. Leveraging a significant portion of my personal inheritance, I established the Sterling Legacy Fund, an initiative that had two main, deeply personal branches. First, I financed and oversaw the meticulous design and construction of a state-of-the-art senior community center in Sedona, a haven of peace and purpose for older adults. It was a place designed to offer enriching activities, educational programs, and genuine community, a vibrant, thriving hub where no one would ever be called useless or a burden. I poured my heart into every detail of its design, ensuring every aspect, from the wide, accessible garden paths to the sun-drenched art studios and the fully equipped fitness center, fostered a sense of belonging, dignity, and active engagement. I personally interviewed every staff member, seeking out individuals with genuine compassion, profound respect for elders, and an unwavering commitment to enriching the lives of others. The center quickly became a beloved cornerstone of the community, a living testament to the power of human connection and quiet dignity. Second, I invested in affordable housing projects for families, using sustainable building practices and creating safe, nurturing environments where children like Leo could truly thrive, unburdened by financial insecurity. I worked closely with visionary architects and urban planners, designing communities that were not just affordable, but beautiful, environmentally conscious, and fostered a strong sense of neighborhood belonging. These were places of dignity, built on integrity and a deep belief in the transformative power of a stable home, mirroring the values Arthur and I had always held. I even initiated a unique program where residents could contribute to community gardening, minor repairs, and shared maintenance in exchange for reduced rent, fostering a powerful sense of ownership, collective responsibility, and mutual support. My life in Sedona blossomed, vibrant, and deeply fulfilling. My garden flourished, more abundant and colorful than ever, each bloom a quiet, personal triumph. My home, once steeped in grief and then fear, was now filled with genuine laughter, Leo's joyful shouts, my own contented chuckles, and the occasional comforting visits from Evelyn, who had become a dear friend and trusted confidant. We would often sit on my sun-drenched porch, sipping iced tea, discussing everything from complex corporate ethics to the subtle art of cultivating resilience in the face of adversity. And then there was my online blog, The Quiet Reckoning. I started it anonymously, cautiously at first, sharing my story in carefully crafted, empowering narratives about financial betrayal and how I, an underestimated woman, had reclaimed my life. It became a thriving community, a digital sanctuary for thousands around the world who, like me, had been dismissed, underestimated, discarded, and then, miraculously, risen from the ashes of betrayal. I never revealed my full identity, preferring to let the universal themes and profound lessons of the stories speak for themselves. My wisdom, born of hard-won experience and quiet observation, resonated deeply with a vast and diverse audience. Messages poured in from every continent, from people who felt seen, understood, and profoundly inspired by my anonymous narrative. Thank you for giving me the courage to look at my own family's finances. It saved me, one message read. Your story showed me I'm not alone in feeling invisible, another offered, echoing my own past fears. It was a profound connection, a quiet revolution sparked by shared vulnerability and emergent strength, proving that even the most private struggles could become a source of immense collective power. Leo, now a vibrant 9-year-old, spent every other weekend with me, his eyes bright with curiosity as I showed him the architectural plans for the new community center. or patiently explained the intricate workings of a solar panel on one of my housing projects. He knew nothing of his parents' crimes, only that his Grandma V was a strong, kind, and incredibly wise woman who was building amazing things that helped people. His innocence was my greatest reward, the truest, most enduring legacy. I watched him grow, knowing that the foundation I was laying for his future was built on honesty, purpose, and unshakable integrity, not on deceit and corrosive greed. Blaine continued his arduous journey of redemption. He had joined the board of my Sterling Legacy Fund, not in a leadership role, but as a dedicated, active volunteer, putting his considerable skills in logistics and administration to good use for ethical causes. He had truly changed, no longer blinded by ambition or easily swayed by manipulation. He often sought my advice, not just on business matters, but on life, on integrity, on what it meant to be a man of genuine character. His relationship with Leo deepened and blossomed, becoming a source of quiet joy for both of them. He became a regular, familiar face at the senior center, volunteering his time, listening to the stories of the residents, and even offering his business acumen to help them with their administrative needs. A quiet, sincere atonement. One glorious afternoon, as we walked through the bustling senior center, the air filled with the gentle sounds of laughter, the clinking of chess pieces, and the murmur of contented conversation, Blaine stopped, turning to me, his eyes filled with a profound gratitude that touched my very soul. "Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion, a sincerity I had once thought lost forever. "I'm proud of what you've built here. The senior center, the housing project, the way you saved Sterling. Dad would be proud too. More than proud." I smiled then, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached my eyes. "Arthur would be proud, yes. But more importantly, Blaine, I'm proud of what you're building now. You're building trust, integrity, and a true legacy for Leo. That's what truly matters." He squeezed my hand, a silent, powerful acknowledgement of the long, arduous journey we had both undertaken, a silent promise of a different future. After he left, I sat on a bench in the center's sun-drenched courtyard, watching the elderly residents play chess and chat, their faces alight with joy. The Sedona sunset painted the sky in brilliant, fiery shades of gold, crimson and lavender, casting long, peaceful shadows across the desert landscape. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, confused, discarded, supposedly powerless, a relic waiting to be shelved. That woman was gone, replaced by someone who understood that true power isn't about control over others, or a title, or a vast fortune. It's about control over your own destiny, about how you use your resources, your wisdom, your experiences. It's not about how much money you accumulate, but how you deploy it for purpose. Not about grand titles, but about the profound purpose that guides your every step. Some storms destroy everything in their path, leaving only desolation. But sometimes, if you're strong enough, resilient enough to weather them, they clear away everything that was holding you back, everything that was false, and leave you free to build something better, something authentic, something enduring. I had endured the raw agony of betrayal, navigated the treacherous waters of corporate deceit, and emerged not just stronger, but wiser, more compassionate, and fiercely, beautifully independent. I had reclaimed my life, not through vengeance alone, but through quiet resolve, strategic action, and the unwavering, unshakable belief in my own intrinsic worth. To anyone listening, to anyone who has ever been called useless, or too old, or too dumb to know what's really happening, hear this, and hear it clearly. Your story matters. Your voice matters. Your quiet strength is your greatest weapon, your most potent defense. Don't let anyone define your worth, dictate your narrative, or attempt to erase your future. You always have choices. You can choose to be a victim, consumed by resentment, or you can choose to rise, to rebuild, to create something profoundly beautiful and meaningful from the ashes of betrayal. It won't be easy. There will be tears, moments of crushing frustration, and dark nights of self-doubt. But if you hold on to your truth, Leverage your unique strengths and steadfastly refuse to be silenced. You can transform your greatest wound into your greatest power, your deepest pain into your greatest purpose. I am Vanessa, a grandmother, a survivor, a CEO who chose a different path, and I am the architect of my own destiny. And so can you be. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Share your thoughts, because when we share our stories, when we lift each other up, we realize we are never, ever alone. We are connected, bound by the universal human experiences of struggle, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of our own authentic truth. We are the quiet reckoners, and our time has come.